Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about emergency planning on the Cape, and I'm here in the studio with Kevin Morley, Public Information Officer in the Barnstable County Emergency Preparedness Division, Dennis Police Chief Mike Whalen, who is co-chair of the Barnstable County Regional Emergency Planning Committee, and Phil Burt, who is Barnstable County Emergency Preparedness Project Assistant. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with what your roles are with regard to emergency planning on the Cape. We can start with you, Kevin.
Thanks. It's very nice to be here today. My job as Public Information Officer is to ensure that the residents and visitors to Barnstable County are made aware of any emergencies that are coming up, and then how to prepare and what to do actually when the emergency is upon us, such as a winter storm or a hurricane.
And Chief, what's your role as the co-chair?
Well, I co-chair with Mark Foley, the fire chief in Eastham, and our job as co-chairs is to kind of coordinate the multidiscipline factions of the Emergency Planning Committee, health departments, police, fire, EMS, so that we kind of have a coordinated response to emergencies when they come up.
And how long have you been involved with the committee, Chief?
Been with the committee probably going on about 8 years now. Peter Carnes was originally the police representative as co-chair, and then when he retired from Yarmouth, I took his spot.
And how does that come about? Where is that an elected position, or is it sort of everyone steps back and you're left standing there?
Well, it's actually now Ron Fizette, the police chief in Wellfleet, will be taking over, and he's actually at the next meeting. He'll be taking my spot, so he didn't move back fast enough.
So is it a sort of a volunteer position where you say, I'll take it on for a few years?
Yes.
Okay, and Phil, how about you?
So I'm the Emergency Preparedness Project Assistant with Barnstable County. I work with the REPC. My main function is to oversee and help sort of facilitate the regional sheltering plan that's been put together by folks like Chief Whalen here over the past several years. Sort of just kind of keep all the volunteer agencies that are part of that plan, just sort of facilitating that process.
And let's start with explaining what the Barnstable County Regional Emergency Planning Committee does in a little bit more detail, because many of our listeners may not be familiar with it. How often does it meet, for instance?
Well, the committee itself meets once a month, typically throughout the year, and we have attendance from police, fire, health departments, DPWs, anyone who ultimately will be responsible in the time of emergency. The meetings typically last from 1.5 to 2 hours, with usually a presentation imparting some new knowledge, some new approach, and anything that will help people prepare for the all-hazards emergency environment.
If I could just add, probably the greatest piece of our whole emergency planning committee is our volunteers. While the professional staff in public safety, first responders, and health departments at DPW are there, the greatest part of our committee is probably made up of our volunteers from either Red Cross, Cape Cod DART, which is the animal sheltering piece, our weather forecasters, Frank O'Laughlin, who kind of keeps us busy and keeps us up to speed on what the impending storms are, and any number of volunteers, Red Cross and so forth, that help us out through the season.
And who else is on the committee? Is there someone from every town? And you said, I know that the police, fire, and DPW perhaps are all represented. How does that work?
Every town gets a vote, one vote. But certainly from a multidisciplinary approach, which is really the bedrock, if you will, of incident command protocols and the National Incident Management System that came right after the terrible incident in New York, everybody gets to come to the table, and that way we have a more comprehensive response to situations when they happen. And we include our state partners at MEMA and so forth in the process, and also our federal partners. People from the Coast Guard are there and so forth, and they come to our meetings as well.
So in terms of voting, every town has one vote, is that
That's
right?
correct.
And so a town would make sure that they had a representative there. And what would be the types of things you'd be voting on?
Well, we vote on different plans as they come about. We voted a number of years ago to move forward with a regional sheltering plan, and that's now in place. We vote on different members of different committees and different panels and put people in place so that, again, the idea behind the Emergency Planning Committee, as the name entails, is to pre-plan for events so that we're not kind of going by the seat of our pants as the incidents happen. We've already got a well-thought-out discipline plan in place before the incident happens.
And what types of emergencies does the committee deal with? Because I know there's a whole host, a whole range of different types of emergencies that you're looking at.
Well, we started out as a hazmat planning group, and the first plan that we put together involved a response to hazardous materials. And then we moved into the sheltering piece. Sheltering to us was very important because as much as there is a Cape Cod evacuation plan, anybody that's been here on just about any day of the week knows that during the height of the season it's very difficult to evacuate our island. So we've put that plan in place, and believe it or not, over the last few weeks, you might have heard that there's been a bit of an Ebola issue, and people concerned about that. And so we're trying to put together a plan that involves best practices amongst all the disciplines, police, fire, EMS, and health departments, and even animal control, so that if we do have an incident here, not that we expect to have one, but if we do have one, we'll already have our ducks in a row and everybody will understand what their role is in responding to that.
And you've gotten into this a little bit, saying that the Cape is an island, but what are the special challenges, maybe getting into a little more detail on the special challenges we have here on the Cape when it comes to emergency planning?
Well, taking that and switching it around 180 degrees, one of the benefits we have on being an island of sorts is that we have the ability to work very closely, and everyone has the impetus to work very closely together. If you're in an area that's unbounded in the Midwest, where town upon town, runs into each other and goes beyond, we have people who we're together very closely. So that is actually a benefit. So that's taking that look at it. In terms of the special challenges, we have this isolation, too. And if something happens, we have to take care of ourselves. So that really adds another, as I said, an impetus to work together closely.
Yeah, I would say the geography is a challenge, but the geography is also a benefit because, those two bridges kind of set us apart, but also allow all the towns. It just makes natural sense for all the towns to, they're all sort of facing the same issues. So taking that regional approach in this particular case can be very helpful.
And I'm sure everyone's seen those blue evacuation signs all over the Cape, and they're all over the state, I guess. What role do those play in terms of what you folks do?
Well, our issue has always been, and one that we've discussed with both our state partners and our federal partners, is that as much as we can have an evacuation plan, the fact of the matter is, and we've seen this in storm after storm, is that especially our visitors who come here that may be paying $3,000-$4,000 for a week to stay in a house or a place, and you've got a storm coming up the coast, and you're not going to know until really 24 hours out whether or not you're a target zone or not. That cone of opportunity starts to shrink, but certainly 36 or 48 hours out, that cone's pretty wide, and people are just not going to leave when there's that much ambiguity in the forecast. So from that standpoint, our position has always been that we need to have a robust sheltering plan in effect. And let me just caution people, you're not coming to the Hilton. You're not coming to the Westin to get a dream bed. You're coming to a place that all we guarantee is that there'll be something to eat, that it'll be dry, and that you'll have a place to sleep. But other than that, it's a pretty Spartan environment. On the other hand, it's a safe environment, a dry environment, and one that you'll be safe in.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about the county's Emergency Planning Committee, and I'm talking with Kevin Morley from the county, Dennis Police Chief Mike Whalen, and Phil Burt, also from the county. Now, Chief, you mentioned the shelter system, and let's get into a little more detail on the Cape's shelter system and what else should residents know about that. Phil?
Sure. Well, there's 6 regional shelters, and kind of going back a little bit, that stems back from really the efforts of folks like Chief Whalen here and Glenn Beasley of the Red Cross back several years ago. It was kind of pointed out that a lot of the towns were the Red Cross and the towns didn't really have the capacity necessarily to run individual shelters in each of their towns. You've got. Some cases you'd have 15 to 20 shelters in 15 towns. So the Red Cross and I think folks like Chief Whalen decided that they could kind of take a more regional approach and use buildings that are a little bit larger, more strategically placed, and take this regional approach to sheltering. So there now are 6 regional shelters. There's Sandwich High School, Falmouth High School, Barnstable Intermediate School, the Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School, Cape Tech in Harwich, and Nauset Regional High School in Eastham. And as the chief mentioned earlier, we have volunteer agencies, Red Cross, Cape Cod Medical Reserve Corps, Cape Cod DART, AmeriCorps Cape Cod. There's various volunteer agencies that work in the shelters to provide services, provide food, provide some very basic medical care if needed. Take care of pets when needed, and the plan is in place. And basically, the REPC, the Regional Emergency Planning Committee, with folks, with the chief of police, with fire chiefs, so on and so forth, are able to activate that plan when necessary.
And you mentioned the different shelters, and how does one know which shelter they should go to? And some, I think, allow pets and some don't. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I think with respect to pets, the approach is hopefully that all of them will be able to handle pets. Now, in a case-by-case basis, that may not be the case. I mean, this all comes down to volunteers. And so, this can be a pitch to folks. If you're looking to volunteer, there are opportunities out there, and organizations like Cape Cod DART, like American Red Cross, like Cape Cod Medical Reserve Corps, they can take volunteers, because in the end, while we like to say that we have the capacity to do it for each of them, that's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee, but that is the approach that we take, that they all have that capacity. And with respect to going to a specific one, I would say probably just what's the nearest one to you, I would think, really. There are Provincetown does have their own, what we kind of call a satellite shelter, because, Provincetown being pretty far out in the end of the Cape, obviously. And the town of Bourne on the other side of the bridge has their own sort of satellite shelter that we work with, but don't staff to the same level as the other 6. But I think with respect to that question, it would be just whichever one, you're geographically closest to.
And what are the capacity levels at each of them? Are they similar?
I actually have the exact numbers. But so the Red Cross, when they go into one of these facilities, they sort of assess the size of it. So they do a very basic square footage of the entire building. And in an emergency evacuation situation, they sort of do a calculation that each individual only needs X number of square feet around them, and they just do some division. And they say, for 24 hours, this building could hold, for example, 1,000 people. But if we're going to go extend to 48 hours, so on multiple days, that space needs to grow, so you get less people. So, for example, for a facility like DY, Dennis Yarmouth, the general population, a multiple day event is estimated at 907 people, so around 900 people. But if you needed to cram people in there in an emergency, the number's up over 2,000 that can be held. And those numbers are relatively similar, plus or minus on most of the buildings. So, if need be, you could fit a lot of people into those 6 buildings.
Now, how should an individual resident determine whether they should go to a shelter? What are the different things you recommend? And obviously, people get concerned if it's the winter and they have no power, no generator. That might be one thing. Or senior citizens. What are some of the rules for that?
I mean, I don't think there's any necessarily rules in place, but I think some of the things you just touched on, we go back to Winter Storm Nemo a couple years ago. If you have, a vulnerable population that is without power for an extended period of time in cold weather, with how, your home temperature dropping into the 30s, that kind of thing, you're definitely someone who would, want to take advantage of the regional sheltering system. We do have on our website sort of shelter at home tips. So if folks wanted to stay, if you were expecting to be without power for an extended period of time, but you weren't going to go to a shelter or weren't going to go to a hotel or head off Cape or so on, things that you can do. But generally, I say the shelters are open to anybody. There's no particular population that is required to go or anything like that. But I would say if you live in an area that's typically susceptible to losing power, because there are those parts of the Cape where the power goes out more frequently than others, it is an option available to you.
And anything to add to that, Kevin?
Just that people need to be aware that the shelters exist, and that we will be putting out messages ahead of time announcing when shelters are going to be opened, and also on our website, which might be a good time for me to plug a website, which is www.bcrepc.org. And we have a shelter map which is activated, and they can go right to that website and see what shelters are going to be open, obviously prior to any power going out. So it's all about being prepared. If you know there's a storm coming, and it's hard when the press starts to build up the storms 24 hours, 2 days ahead of time. That's when people need to start looking at what they're going to do. Are they prepared if they want to stay at home, and are they prepared if they think they're going to seek shelter? And they have to remember that the shelter is not a cruise line; it's a lifeboat. And if you're going to a shelter, you have to bring. It's like going on a trip. If you're going for 3 days, you have to bring your medicine. You have to bring your eyeglasses. It's not a pharmacy. You have to bring medications. That's a really important thing for people to remember. But the big thing is stay alert, be prepared. And we will give you plenty of warning and guidance in terms of when the shelters will be opened.
Now we're coming out of hurricane season and into the winter season. Any special things you like to tell residents of Cape Cod during this season, the winter, which tends to be when we hear about the shelters opening up, when we lose power?
Well, there's positives and negatives. Obviously, we're coming out of the heavy season, so we have less people on the Cape. But we also find that our winter storms seem to knock us a little harder than our summer storms do. At least summer storms may come through. You may have a heavy wind, but after it's over, usually it warms up and you don't have the cold. We find that, at least in the last 8 years I've been doing this, I find that the winter storms seem to take more of a toll on our folks than the summer storms do. And often people are a little more isolated in the winter because they don't have as many neighbors around. And it's usually more the seniors and the folks that can't get around that are here. So they have a tendency to be a little more vulnerable than other folks are. And we saw that certainly with Nemo, the amount of people that we had in our shelter system over that storm. Certainly the percentage of people that needed extra care or watching was much higher than we typically get when we open a shelter.
And unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me here today.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
Our pleasure.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.